Welcome back. We start our news bulletin from Indian-occupied Kashmir, where occupation forces have martyred 4 more youths in Kulgam and Islamabad districts. In their fresh act of state terrorism, the occupying forces martyred 2 civilians in different cordon and search operations in the districts. Now, the troops martyred 2 youths at Nipora area of Kulgam and the 2 at Lalan area of Islamabad district. The cordon and search operations are underway in the districts. The Indian police and troops have sealed all entry and exit points of the areas. The occupation authorities have shut down internet services in the district. The Indian forces have martyred 27 innocent Kashmiris during this month. Nepal has approved its new map from the lower house to officially declare disputed areas with India as Nepalese territory. The constitutional amendment bill was supported by all the 258 lawmakers present. The passage of the bill consolidates Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's standing within the and without the ruling Communist Party. There has been no formal response from New Delhi yet to the new maps, which show Kalapani, Limpiadura and Lipulakh as Nepalese areas. The move is going to make the boundary row a permanent irritant in relations between Kathmandu and New Delhi. Meanwhile, Nepalese forces have killed 1 Indian citizen and arrested another. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now moving to Afghanistan, where 8 people have been killed in an attack in Afghanistan's eastern Khost province. Police said Abdul Wali Ikhlas, a Hizb-e-Islami member and former parliamentary candidate, was among those killed. A provincial police spokesperson said the attack took place near a clinic in Alisher district. They said the police are investigating the incident. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. The worldwide death count from the new coronavirus has crossed 425,000, while infections jumped over 7.6 million. Brazil has reported 909 more fatalities in the past 24 hours, taking tally to nearly 42,000. In the US, 825 more people died overnight, with the countrywide death toll reaching over 114,000. This report has more details.
Dozens of US states are grappling with the rising number of coronavirus patients filling hospital beds. Top US infectious disease official Anthony Fauci has cautioned that rising hospitalizations can get out of control in absence of vigorous tracing. Meanwhile, Brazil's COVID-19 death toll has overtaken that of the UK to become the second highest in the world after the US. The Mexico City's mayor said the capital will lift restrictions on traffic and public transport from the next week, despite over 500 new deaths in the country. In Chile, army has come out on streets to safeguard the coronavirus lockdowns and curfews in the country.
Our efforts to contain the virus have increased. After what we have seen, people are not respecting the quarantine, and in the last few weeks with the number of infections every day, controls are becoming more rigorous.
France says it will gradually reopen its borders with countries outside the Schengen zone from July 1st. Poland says it is also opening its borders for EU citizens starting from today following the COVID-19 lockdown. Britain's Transport Secretary has defended the country's quarantine, saying it was the right thing to be doing.
Been fighting this virus, getting the R number below 1. What we don't want to do is, end up sort of essentially re-importing it, either by people coming here or Brits going abroad and coming back. So I think the idea of quarantine is the right thing to be doing, and I note that it has broad public support.
In the meantime, Egypt and South Africa have reported the highest daily increase in coronavirus cases since the pandemic began in the region.
Now, Pakistan has reported its highest number of new coronavirus infections in a single day. The Health Ministry reported nearly 6,500 new infections, exceeding total to over 132,000. It said 88 people died during the past 24 hours, raising the tally to 2,551. The ministry said over 50,000 patients have recovered so far across the country. It said the province of Punjab leads in the number of cases with over 50,000 infections, while the province of Sindh is behind with over 49,000 cases. The Saudi-led military coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed a ballistic missile targeting the Saudi Arabian border city of Najran. In a statement, the coalition said the missile was fired from the Yemeni city of Sada. It said a few people were slightly wounded in the attack. The attack comes after Yemen's Houthi rebels expressed willingness to engage in a dialogue with the coalition to end the conflict. In an interview, the rebels' leader Muhammad Ali al-Houthi said he is ready for talks to reach a ceasefire and lift the siege on Yemen. The ensuing war has been a stalemate for years, and the UN-led peace efforts have stalled since late 2018. Now, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune says his country is ready to sponsor a peace agreement in Libya as it did in Mali. In a press briefing, the president said Algiers reject military actions in Libya and hold a position to stay away from all the parties involved in the crisis. He said Algeria has always considered Tripoli a red line. The president said if the Libyan capital had fallen into the hands of warlord Khalifa Haftar, it would have resulted in an all-out civil war. Tebboune's remarks came as the UN called for a thorough probe after mass graves were found in Tarhouna in Libya. Meanwhile, Speaker of Libya's Tobruk-based parliament, Aquila Saleh, arrived in Algeria for a surprise visit. Moving on, North Korea has warned South Korea of regretful and painful times ahead, saying Pyongyang has lost its confidence in Seoul. In a statement, United Front Department Director Jang Kyung-chol said Seoul has failed to back up its promises with tangible actions. Jang said Seoul did not deal with activists flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets into the north and legislate a ban on the practice as promised. He accused Seoul of lacking concern for the inter-Korean relations and urged South Korea to respect the 2018's Panmunjom Declaration. The Panmunjom Declaration calls for complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and improving inter-Korean relations. During the past weeks, Pyongyang has strongly protested the leaflet campaigns and threatened stern measures that could affect inter-Korean relations. In the US, the anti-racism demonstrations calling for justice system reform have entered their 18th consecutive day. Hundreds of protesters barricaded the Capitol Hill neighborhoods in Seattle. Seattle's Mayor Jenny Durkan has rejected President Donald Trump's suggestion to deploy the military to dispel protesters in the area. Meanwhile, Trump has called for an end to the use of chokehold that killed George Floyd in Minneapolis last month. But the president said employing the restraint would be understandable if a police officer is confronted with a potentially lethal force. In New York, the state government has adopted a series of laws designed to put an end to police brutality against the minorities. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo signed 10 laws, including a ban on chokeholds.
The New York State Legislature has quickly passed the most aggressive reforms in the nation. I'm going to sign those bills in a moment. 58 reforms, so there's transparency. We're banning chokeholds, Attorney General Special Prosecutor, ending false race-based 9/11 reports.
In the U.S., the Minneapolis City Council has passed a resolution to pursue a community-led public safety system to replace the police department. The move comes days after a veto-proof majority of the council voted to disband the police department as countrywide protests continue. More details in this report.
Council members wrote that the murder of George Floyd is a tragedy that shows no amount of reforms will prevent lethal violence against people of color. Floyd's death has sparked a wave of protests against police violence and racism across the US and across the world. According to the resolution, the City Council will begin a year-long process of engaging to come up with a new public safety model. The Council commissioned a new work group to deliver recommendations on how to engage with stakeholders to transform the public safety system. Earlier, more than a dozen Minneapolis police officers published an open letter to condemn the actions of Derek Chauvin, the officer who knelt on Floyd.
As protests against racial injustice continue across the world, artists have joined in to bring colors to the demonstrations. Artists are painting George Floyd's murals in tribute to the African-American who died in the U.S. after a white police officer knelt on his neck. This report has details.
Pakistani trucks are famous for their flamboyant appearance with elaborate patterns and murals, known as truck art. In the country's southern port city of Karachi, the video of Floyd's custodial killing had a profound effect on the truck artist Haider Ali. Ali painted a mural of Floyd on the wall of his house as he says the incident left him disturbed and restless.
When I saw the video of George Floyd, I was thinking the cop will leave him the next moment. But then I saw they killed the poor man brutally. I stopped watching television and I came upstairs so I could not bear it watching anymore. The scene kept repeating in my mind and it was very cruel. Then I made this painting. I painted these candles and I made these flowers as a garland around his neck to pay him tribute.
Also in the Afghan city capital, artists painted a mural of Floyd on a blast wall, joining protests against police brutality and discrimination. The group behind the painting is Art Lords and views art as a tool for social change. They are known for painting murals with messages of peace and social justice on concrete blast walls in Kabul that were erected to ward off militant bombs. The residents of the city expressed the horrors of the incident.
I watched the incident online and it was very painful. When the helpless man wanted to escape death, the police did not release him and cause his death. I also live in a country that has witnessed war for 40 years, a war in which discrimination is used.
At the Berlin Wall, a large portrait of Floyd is seen alongside spellings, "I can't breathe," words he repeated before dying. In the US, the UK, Syria, Palestine, and many more countries as well, artists have painted Floyd's murals with his last words.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has postponed his election rally in Tulsa so it does not fall on a holiday commemorating the end of slavery. In a tweet, Trump said the June 19th rally would be held a day later out of respect for the occasion known as Juneteenth. The choice of date had drawn criticism amid the nationwide anti-racism protests. The location was also controversial as Tulsa saw one of the worst massacres of black people in U.S. history in 1921. Campaign rallies are seen as a key method of energizing his base, and Oklahoma is traditionally a Republican voting state. The Make America Great Again rally in Tulsa will be the president's first campaign event since lockdown measures were initiated. Thousands of protesters have gathered in central London despite police warnings to avoid demonstrations. The Met Police placed restrictions on several groups intending to protest on Saturday. Measures including requiring the event to end at 5 p.m. are in place following violent scenes last weekend. Earlier, organizers urged people not to join any anti-racism rallies planned for the weekend. Various right-wing activists and groups formed of football supporters said they had come to London to protect symbols of British history. The statue of Churchill was boxed up to protect it from potential damage after protesters dubbed was a racist on its last weekend. Now, the UK said that the International Criminal Court must be able to work independently without fear of sanction. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the London supports the ICC in tackling impunity for worst international crimes. He said the UK will continue to support positive reforms of the court so that it operates effectively as possibly. Raab added the ICC officials should be able to carry out their work impartially. UK support comes 2 days after US President Donald Trump approved economic and travel sanctions against the ICC. The US sanctions target the court's employees involved in an investigation into possible American war crimes in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, France urged the US to refrain from implementing measures targeting ICC officials. France has called on the US authorities to lift sanctions against the employees of the International Criminal Court. In a statement, French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said the US decision risks putting into question the independence of the justice system. He said Washington's move is an attack on the states that are party to the Rome Statute and a challenge to multilateralism. Meanwhile, Switzerland has also expressed regret over the U.S. decision and called on Washington to lift the restrictions. The Swiss cabinet reaffirmed its support for the ICC as an independent body. Earlier, the U.S. imposed sanctions against ICC employees involved in an investigation into whether American forces committed war crimes in Afghanistan. Turkish Coast Guard Command says it has rescued 381 asylum seekers over the past week. In a tweet, the Coast Guard said the migrants were rescued in 14 incidents. It said 3 smugglers were also arrested during the rescue operation. Turkey has been one of the main routes for asylum seekers wanting to reach Europe, especially since Syria's civil war began in 2011. Turkey hosts nearly 4 million Syrians. In Libya, 2 people have been killed in a mine explosion in the capital, Tripoli. The government of National Accord says Khalifa Haftar's forces planted the mines before fleeing from the capital. In a statement, the army said mines exploded in a civilian settlement in the southern part of the capital. It said so far 29 people have died in such explosions. Meanwhile, the GNA has claimed to find 3 additional mass graves in Tarhuna. The Justice Ministry said the area of the graves will be cordoned off for forensic investigation. Earlier, the government said 8 mass graves were found in areas previously controlled by Haftar's forces. The UN says tons of coal and other precious metals from Congo are being smuggled into supply chains through its eastern neighbors. A UN report has found that the gold production in the country continues to be systematically underreported. The UN group of experts found in its annual report that at least 1.1 tons of gold was smuggled out of Ituri province alone in 2019. The countries along Congo's eastern border have long been conduits for gold mined by artisanal miners. Germany's Federal Institute for Geosciences and Natural Resources has estimated that miners in Congo produce 15 to 22 tons of gold a year. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. India has reported its biggest single-day surge in COVID-19 cases as over 11,400 tested positive for the virus. The country has now become the world's 4th worst hit with over 308,000 infections. The health ministry said the countrywide death toll from the virus has reached nearly 8,900. It said major cities like Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai are badly affected. Earlier, the Supreme Court sought a report from New Delhi authorities saying patients faced a horrendous situation in packed hospitals. The city needs 80,000 hospital beds by end of next month, but currently has only 11,000. In Nepal, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of Kathmandu against the government's response of COVID-19. Police arrested 10 people, including 7 foreigners, for holding demonstrations. Police said an estimated 1,000 people gathered in the capital to hold protests for the 3rd day. Protesters are demanding better quarantine facilities, more tests and transparency in the purchase of medical supplies to fight the virus. Nepal's government says it has spent about $89 million to fight the pandemic, but the activists insist this was not enough in a country of 30 million people. Now, in China, at least 10 people have been killed and over 100 others are injured in an oil tanker explosion in eastern Zhejiang province. Officials say an oil tank truck caught fire and exploded on an expressway in Taizhou city. They said more than 450 firefighters are helping with the rescue efforts. The explosion caused chaos, damaging nearby houses and factory workshops. Now, Brazil has included complaints of police violence from an annual human rights report sparkling allegations of a cover-up. The federal government's 2019 human rights report made no mention of the alleged incidents of police abuse. In a statement, the Human Rights Ministry said the information was left out due to technical reasons. The ministry said the information was to be disclosed at a later date after an in-depth study of the inconsistencies identified in its record. Critics accuse the government of omitting the information because of political and ideological choices. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has repeatedly called for police crackdowns on criminals, drugs and gang violence. Brazil ranks among the world's deadliest countries, with over 40,000 murders reported in 2019. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences says it is initiating a 5-year plan to promote diversity in the film industry. In a statement, the Academy said it will work with the Producers Guild of America to encourage equitable hiring practices on and off the screen.
The Academy said the filmmakers will have to meet the inclusion guidelines in order for their works to be eligible for Oscars. The organization said the eligibility criteria will be finalized by July 31st, but the rules will not apply to films vying for the 2021 Oscars. The Academy responded in part by doubling the number of women and people of color in its invitation-only ranks. Still, by 2019, just 32% of its roughly 8,000 members were women and 16% were people of color. The Academy has been criticized for a lack of diversity in recent years, with the backlash peaking in 2015 with the Oscars So White hashtag. New members will be announced next month.
Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says he will be ready to take action to help the UK economy crisis amid coronavirus pandemic. This comes after the figures show the economy shrunk by 20.4% in April, the largest monthly contraction on record. Bailey said Britain is still very much in the middle of a pandemic, but the figure was in line with what the bank has expected. He said there are signs of the economy now beginning to come back to life as the government lifted some lockdown restrictions. The Office for National Statistics said April's historic fall affected all areas of activity as large parts of the economy remain shut to battle the pandemic. The contraction is 3 times greater than the decline seen during the 2008 economic downturn. In the United Kingdom, MPs claim that the British Airways treatment of staff during the coronavirus crisis is a national disgrace. A Transport Select Committee report accuses the airline of a calculated attempt to take advantage of the pandemic by cutting thousands of jobs. British Airways says it is doing all it can to keep the maximum number of jobs. The Transport Committee found that airline received nearly £35 million from the government as of 14 May by furloughing 22,000 staff. The MPs also noted that at the end of 2019, the airline recorded profits after tax of £1.1 billion and had cash reserves of £2.6 billion. They said the airline's actions fell well below the standards expected from any employer. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. With the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For the latest updates, you can always follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.